All right, I'm going to talk to you about how to solve two-step equations. And what I mean by two-step equations is it is when you solve an equation and you have to use two different steps, so two different operations to find the value of the variable. So the first example I'm going to start off with is 3x minus 7 equals 5. And the trick is, or the rule is, that you always do reverse order of operations. And what I mean by that is normally when we're solving a problem, we multiply and divide before we add and subtract. Well, when you're solving an equation, you're going to do it reversed, so you're going to add or subtract before you multiply or divide. So for this problem, I've got my two sides, and that was totally crooked, sorry. I've got my two sides of the equation, and so I've got my 3x minus 7 and my 5. And the idea here is to get the variable completely by itself, so it just says x is equal to some number. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So to get the variable by itself, I'm going to start off by adding 7. But if I add 7 on the left, I want to add 7 on the right. So 5 plus 7 is 12. Negative 7 plus 7, those cancel out, and then that leaves me with just 3x on the left. Now I want to solve for x, so I'm going to, and let me just change colors. So to solve for x, I'm going to divide by 3. Because x is being multiplied, I'm going to do the opposite operation, which is divide. So I'm going to divide the left by 3, and I'm going to divide the right by 3. My 3's cancel out, leaving me with x is equal to 4. Now, in class, we talked about different properties, and I want you to get used to labeling what property you use when you are in the process of solving an equation. So here, because we added, we used the addition property of equality. So I know I'm not writing this very addition, I didn't write it all. Property of equality. And then down here, because we divided, we used the division property of equality. Okay? Now let's try another example. All right, so here we have x divided by 3 plus 4 is equal to 1. So again, we want to do reverse order of operations. We're going to do any adding or subtracting first. And it's really important because if we multiply both sides by 3, we're not going to get, it's not going to work out the same, okay? So we're going to start by subtracting 4 from both sides. And when I subtract 4, 1 minus 4 is negative 3. And so I have x divided by 3 is equal to negative 3. Because I subtracted here, I use the subtraction property of equality. And I'm just substituting for space purposes, or abbreviating for space purposes. But it's the subtraction property of equality. Now again, I want to solve for x. I want to get the x by itself. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. My 3's over here cancel out. 3 over 3 is equal to 1. And 1 times x is x. So that's why I'm able to just cancel them out. So then I'm left with x is equal to negative 9. Oh, and I forgot to write. Because I multiplied here, we used the multiplication property of equality. Okay? The last one I'm going to do is 5 times x plus 1 is equal to 15. Now, there's actually two ways you can do this one. And actually, let me, okay. I can first use the distributive property where I distribute the 5 to everything on the inside. So that gives me 5x plus 5 is equal to 15. And by doing so, I used the distributive property, and that's one of the properties that I want you to know. Okay, so I use the distributive property. I think I have a ghost writing on here. Let's try that again. That's really weird. Okay, so we use the distributive property. So now I am going to subtract 5 from both sides. And so that's the subtraction property of equality. So those cancel out, and that leaves me with 5x is equal to 10. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 5. And that's the division property of equality. And so x is equal to 2. Okay, now the other way you can do it is without using the distributive property. And that is because this 5 is being multiplied by everything right here in parentheses first, I can go ahead and divide by 5 first. Now, normally, like I said, we do reverse order of operations, but this is in parentheses, so I can't subtract the 1 from both sides. I have to divide by the 5. So, so when I divide by 5, and that's using the division property of equality, I am left with x plus 1 is equal to 3. So now I can subtract 1 from both sides of my equation, and again, that's a subtraction property of equality. Those cancel out, leaving me with x is equal to 2. And that was the same answer we got up here. We distributed before we solved it. Here we just went ahead and divided, and then once we did that, we don't even need the parentheses anymore. Okay?